has gone to a reserve on a fact-finding mission. Why are you going?
I think as the mayor of the largest city in Canada, and we don't have the biggest Aboriginal population, but we have tens of thousands of urban Aboriginal people living in our city, that at a time when we're trying to say that we're going to sort of reconcile, and that means learn more and acknowledge some of the things that have not been done well in the past, that I should go as just as a gesture of leadership and to learn. And undoubtedly I'll come back with some things that we could be doing, or even just information I can convey to people in Toronto about our role as Canadians in helping to do things better.
And this is completely your idea. You're going without staff.
I'm going by myself. It wasn't my idea. There's a woman, a wonderful woman, whose name is Andrea Carwazon, who's a film producer and an Aboriginal person. And she said to me, well, you know, if you really wanted to learn about this, you'd come on one of our reconciliation trips. And they've taken them for 2 or 3 years now, including, I think, the Premier has been on one, and the Lieutenant Governor Onley, and so on. And so when you go, you live with an Aboriginal family. In my case, I'm only going for 3 days, but you live with an Aboriginal family in their home. And they then make sure that the program is not only just being with them and living their life for that 3 days, but also to go and see the community in depth, see frankly, the poverty of the health facilities and how poor they are, and some of the school facilities and so on. And also to sit, for example, with some of the elders in the community, and they are survivors of the residential school system, and have them tell you firsthand what this meant in terms of not just their own lived experience, but also the experience of their children and grandchildren. And so this is what I'll experience for the 3 days.
Where exactly are you going?
Well, I'm going to a place called Big Trout Lake, and it is 1,600 miles. So in kilometers, I'm not sure what that converts to, but 1,600 miles northwest of Toronto. So it's further away from Toronto than Florida, much further away, 400 miles further than Florida to the northwest. And so it is a very remote Indian reservation where you can't, there is no way to drive there. You have to fly in, or in the winter, I think there's some ability to go by ice road. So again, you get this experience of the isolation of these communities. You find out things such as the fact that the groceries that they buy there have all had to be flown in or something else, and are extraordinarily expensive. And that contributes to various things, including not just poverty for people, but also bad health because they eat poorly. They can't get a head of broccoli or an orange, the way we can as easily here, because they're just too expensive, and that means they end up with bad eating habits. So this is all, again, what I'm going to see firsthand, and have a chance to learn just a little bit. But there's also the symbolism of it, which is to say that the mayor of the country's largest city joins with other Canadians, including mayors in other parts of the country where they have much larger, First Nations populations, to say, we've got to understand what happened in the past, and we have to do better going forward.
It's interesting. I'm really struck by, tonight you're meeting with Black Lives Matter at 7 o'clock this evening, and I'm so struck by how that group has raised awareness about what they feel they need for their community. And yet, when it comes to Aboriginal concerns, it seems to largely be just part of the Canadian fabric, and they've never been able to break through and get into the mainstream conversation the same way that Black Lives Matter has been able to, for example, in a very short period of time.
It's one of the reasons, actually, why Black Lives Matter is important, because, they have a voice that's quite loud, or has been quite loud, and it has brought attention
effective.
And led to a meeting like the one tonight, where you will have the Premier of Ontario, the Mayor of Toronto, and a number of other very senior government officials sitting with them and other groups, listening to some of these concerns. In fact, there will be Aboriginal groups at that meeting. But I think over time, it may well be that we find that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and its report, and the agreement that we all had, and by we all I mean Canadians had, to focus on this and to learn and to reach out to learn, is the same moment that has happened perhaps with respect to some of the other, I'll call them human rights issues. And I certainly hope so. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going on this trip at this time, because we did have this exercise we went through, and if it's to be more than an exercise, then people who are in positions of leadership, whether it's in Toronto or anywhere else, have to go and learn and experience and show that we care enough to show up. And I think it's true as well of some of the issues raised by Black Lives Matter, and the beginning of that whole series of meetings, including ones we will hold in September, are, I think, maybe responsive to the fact this has been put very much on the front burner.
How would you sum up how the situation is for Indigenous people in this country and in this city right now?
I think there are an awful lot of people in the city who are Aboriginal people who are just lost. I mean, they're lost in the sense that they're marginalized and nobody is really focused. And I think there's a lot of them across Canada, and I'll speak for Ontario, that I probably will see this in Big Trout Lake, who are lost. Lost in the sense they have a very clear sense of who they are and what their traditions are and their history. But they're lost in the context of us recognizing and understanding that history and recognizing what that should lead to in terms of actions we should take to make sure that they are, sort of fully integrated, have equal opportunity, and have their rights respected. And that's why I'm going to Big Trout Lake.